Alright everyone, hello, I'm back! My classes have been over, my grades are set, everything is done, the spring semester is over, and it was great, and it was fun, and I think I did something very good with the way I taught my class. It seems the students enjoyed it, everything went pretty well, so you know what? Hell yeah! We did it! Great, I am not bad at my job, yay! Now, you know, as I'm getting ready for the summer and doing all these kinds of summer things, I've got places to be, I've got things to do, I've got people to see. So, that's why I said last time, a lot of these videos are going to be not like hyper long, but not hyper short either. A little bit in the middle. And today we're talking about something that is going to be coming up very soon, and that is Pentecost. So, before we get into that though, hello, my name is Sarah Strayson. I am a Christian witch. I am also an educator, as you might guess, a content creator, a writer, specifically a writer of this book right here, Discovering Christian Witchcraft, which if you were saying to yourself, the fuck is a Christian witch? Well, don't worry. This book is a one-stop shop that really is kind of just like standing in the lobby of a massive room full of all kinds of different stuff, right? Big old library. This thing is the door that opens many doors, because it tells you all about what the Bible actually says about Christian witchcraft, or just witchcraft in general, you know, what the word witch actually meant in its proper socio-political context, both in the Bible and later on, thousands of years later in Europe, folk magic, tips on spell casting, what magic even is, and a lot more. So, if you are sitting here wondering to yourself, is it possible to do spiritual magic stuff and also be a Christian? The answer is yes. Details in that book. Go check it out. But now, Pentecost. Oh boy. This is honestly a holiday that, like, I didn't realize was as important as it is. I learned so many things by teaching. I gotta say that. You know, someone said once upon a time, wise man once said, that you really learn something by teaching it. And I don't know who the fuck said that, honestly, but they were correct, because the more I learn to teach y'all, the more I learn to make things like my Christian Witch Tarot Planner, which we'll be getting another one, of course, this year. And, you know, the more I learn to write books like Discovering Christian Witchcraft, to make all these videos, the more I realize that this religion is, like, not just cool, but, like, really fucking cool. It has a lot of really cool pieces in it. So, this one, Pentecost, is a fun one, because this commemorates the day that the apostles received abilities from the Holy Spirit to speak in tongues, and were filled with the Holy Spirit and able to go forth and just in full authority preach the gospel. And maybe that doesn't sound too exciting, but it is. We'll get into it in a second. Otherwise, though, first, if you are new here, hello, welcome. As you can see, we talk all kinds of stuff about these kinds of topics, so go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe button, and ring that bell if you like this kind of stuff. If you are not new, welcome back. Thank you for coming back. I do appreciate all of your patronage. And remember, for everyone here, that if you want to see these videos 2 weeks early and ad-free, head on over to my Patreon. I got all this and a lot more on there. But so, yeah, again, Pentecost doesn't sound that exciting until you realize that actually it's pretty cool, right? I mean, it is also the root word of entire denomination, right? The Pentecostal denomination. Pentecostal folks are interesting. They're probably one of the witchiest of the Protestant denominations, because they are all about laying on hands, speaking in tongues, you know, prophesying, and like all this other kind of stuff. They believe that these powerful gifts of the Holy Spirit, of, you know, prophesying and healing and all this kind of stuff, that those gifts are still with us, right? There are a lot of denominations that for some reason think that, like, the apostles died and then that was it, like, God just, like, kind of went on a lunch break and never fucking came back. Like, I don't know, the apostolic era is over and now there's no more magic in the world, there's no more prophets, there's no more nothing. We have a book, we have some shit the prophets did, and then, again, I guess this is why everyone's so desperately waiting for the rapture, because as far as they're concerned, God's been out to get milk for the past fucking 2,000 years. Man, I can't imagine. I can't imagine having God directly right in front of me and being like, nope. Maybe one day he'll cut, like, what the fuck? Anyway, I can't get into it. But so Pentecost, right? It's a big deal. If we look at Acts 2, like right at the beginning of the chapter, this is where the basis for this holiday comes in. So this whole thing, right? We have this story where the apostles are chilling there, and they are celebrating Pentecost, which we'll get into that in a second. But as they're celebrating, suddenly a big wind comes through, just blows around, and they feel like they have tongues of fire laid on their heads, right? These tongues of fire, they crown them in that fire, and that is what gives them the ability to start speaking in completely different languages. And this is what speaking in tongues actually means. By the way, it doesn't mean just babbling bullshit, okay? With people with the whole speaking in tongues thing, it doesn't mean just saying random fucking sounds in whatever googly ass light language that whatever, people think it is. No. It means that you miraculously, spontaneously, and suddenly know languages you never knew before. And we could see that. We could see that in this whole chapter, because suddenly the apostles are shouting the good news, the gospel, in every language, in Arabic, in Greek, in all these other tongues, and everyone around them's like, what the fuck? They're like, how am I hearing these country bumpkin ass Galileans talk to me in my own language? When the fuck did they learn my language, right? So people are stunned. They're like, what the fuck? What does this mean? What is happening and what does it mean? Some people, snidely, they make a little giggle. They're like, oh, these guys probably had a little bit too much to drink, right? And then Peter gets up and is like, nah, fuck y'all, actually. Here's what's happening, right? And it's like, and in these times, right, sons and daughters will prophesy, old men will dream dreams, or however it goes. All of these things will happen. And, like, this is what's going on now, right? This is the era that we're in. So, this is where, 60 points to the Pentecostals. Because they're the only ones, it seems, that understand the fact that the death of Jesus and his ascension into heaven after, his rising after, and the apostles doing their thing, didn't seal these gifts away, did not fucking block them off, but in fact exacerbated them. Peter's telling us that now this is the era where all this is happening, where all this is going to happen, where it is happening. People have these abilities now. And this is what makes Christianity so fucking cool, okay? It's time for me to start going off, but this is what makes it so fucking cool, is the fact that this religion just cracked open the seal for everyone to become an equal participant. You don't have to rely on a high priest. You don't have to rely on anybody. You don't have to do any of that shit. You have, by the Holy Spirit and by Jesus Christ, through Jesus Christ, in Jesus Christ, these abilities to manifest these abilities, to use these abilities for the greater good yourself, just as you are. Men and women, young and old, right? Like slave and freeman, everyone has these abilities. Everyone can do these things. Everyone can be an agent of God's will. What is God? God is love. Everyone has the ability to make change, to be an agent of love and divine will in the world. That is incredible. That's awesome. Like, what the hell, right? So that's pretty cool. And that's a big deal. But of course, that's the Christian side. You might be wondering what the fuck, how Pentecost exists as a Christian holiday in the first place, if the apostles, who were Jewish at the time, because Christian wasn't really a term yet, were celebrating it, right? How are these Jewish folks celebrating Pentecost if it's a Christian holiday? Well, it's not just a Christian holiday. The term Pentecost comes from the Greek translation of the Hebrew festival. And so this translation really just kind of means, like, I think like 50 days or something, Penta 50. And that's because in Judaism, there are about 3, harvest festivals. There's the major feast of Passover, right? Which is when Jesus was thought to have died. Jesus died around Passover. His last supper was the Passover meal, right? And then that Passover, right, because it's commemorating leaving Egypt and, getting the fuck out of Dodge, basically, it marks the beginning of the springtime season. So Exodus, the story, Passover, it's always God says you will remember this time every single year at this moment in the springtime, which is interesting. Springtime right here is when we're going to commemorate this, and that's right at the very start of the barley harvest, of the wheat harvest, barley harvest. And so those first fruits are going to the temple, right? There's no leavened bread because they're remembering when their ancestors had to just run away without even being able to, rise their bread, all that kind of stuff. And an interesting note about it being in the springtime, according to my Jewish study Bible, there is some conjecture that the whole painting blood on the door thing for Passover, that this might have been a carryover from an ancient Mesopotamian pastoral rite, where every spring the shepherds, they would do exactly that over the barns. They would paint lamb's blood on the inside of the barns to keep away evil spirits that would then go and tear up and kill the rest of their livestock. So that's very interesting to think about. But nonetheless, it's the very first harvest festival, the very, very, very first grains of this area of the springtime. Since this is kind of like a hotter, warmer climate, more deserty, they've got more room in the calendar year for harvesting, right? Up here in in Zone 6 of America. You're lucky if you get 2 fucking tomatoes by the end of the year. But this is the first part. Now, 50 days later, this is Pentecost, or in Hebrew, Shavuot, right? At least if I'm saying that right, Shavuot. And this is the end of the barley harvest. And this is kind of like when we're really just, it's a minor festival, right? Celebrating. There's nothing like particular story-wise to do on here. Back in the day, this was like a first fruits kind of thing. So this was like giving the first fruits of, you know, whatever new crops are coming in, or whatever new round of wheat you did, bring that to the temple. Now, apparently, because the temple is destroyed, it was destroyed at like 70 CE or so in one of these many skirmishes and rebellions that, you know, Jewish people had trying to get their fucking land back from the Romans. The temple was destroyed, and as a result, these people don't have any temple to dedicate these things to. There's no place to do that. Remember, with Deuteronomy and the reign of King Josiah, all worship was centralized to Jerusalem, which means if the main temple's down, you can't do like pretty much 90% of all the shit that the religion would have you do, which is unfortunate. But anyway, now it's more about commemorating the day that the Torah was given to the Israelites, or you know, just all of the laws of the book of Exodus of Moses, right? When Moses receives all these commandments and he gets all these things, this is like 50 days later, right? Which kind of makes sense, right? You've got leaving Exodus, you're wandering around for like 40 fucking days. You're sitting there at the base of the mountain for 40 fucking days. You're like, I don't know what to do. Now all of a sudden, you get these rules, and there's a little bit of a kerfuffle in there. There's a little bit of a breaking of the tablet because they made the golden calf and they fucked it up, and big mess, right? But let's tack 10 days onto that when God writes up a new fucking tablet for these goons, and bang, 50 days. Now, okay, cool. So this is also, in modern times, it's a time of, interestingly, spiritual renewal for modern Jewish folks. It is a time to remember that their ancestors green-lighted this covenant, that they were the ones that signed up to be with this God and only this God forever, that God gave them all these rules that made them special, that made them the chosen people, that were good for them to follow. And so they remember all of that. They remember what that means. They give thanks, right, for all these things, and they recommit to this covenant that their ancestors made so long ago. It's a beautiful thing. But it's just like a general festival holiday, right? General festival holiday. So you have a holiday meal, you don't work, you know, you read some scriptures, you chill out, you have a nice time with your family. Great. And then the last of the harvest festivals is Sukkot, which is like, it means like booths. And this is the harvest of the first fruits in the fall. This is when all the fruits, like the figs and the palm, all these things are coming in. So I've only briefly seen a little bit about this, but basically you build a booth, and you hang out in it, and you do, you know, festival meals and stuff like that. I'm not Jewish. Hear this from Jewish sources, not me, okay? I'm just trying to give you a general overview of the fact that there are 3 harvest festivals that span from early spring to early autumn in Judaism, and the middle one is the one that the apostles were engaging in when the Holy Spirit came and just like a fucking Pikmin just whoosh, lit them up, and they started freaking out and running the fuck around, right? So, also, great time to point out that, yeah, Judaism has harvest festivals. A lot of people seem to be like, why, if Christianity is so not pagan, does it have all these pagan things in it? My friends, do you think that only Celtic pagans had concepts of a harvest festival? No, anyone who was agricultural had a harvest festival. Be they fucking Persian, Jewish, Celtic, doesn't matter. Everyone who had a harvest festival, okay? It's not a unique idea. But that is the context of Pentecost. And so, when it comes to what that means and what to do on this day, it's quite interesting. So, last year was the first time I got to really engage in Pentecost in a church setting. And it was right before I got confirmed. It was really cool. So basically, there are a couple things you can do. And the major one is to wear the color red. It's thought that the color red symbolizes the great burning fire of the Holy Spirit. So, you know, people show up to church wearing red that day to represent that fire, to represent that, you know, great spiritual energy and vitality, which is really cool to see. So you show up, you can wear red, which is great. Another cool thing that my church did was they actually had people who knew different languages read the exact same reading of Acts for the day, in different languages. So that was really cool, right? Because, right, Acts 2, we're talking about the apostles knowing these different tongues just miraculously. And it was really cool to sit in church and, here's the reader of the day kind of reading in English. And then all of a sudden you just hear a bunch of people in the crowd reading the exact same story in different languages. So I participated. I read it in German, which was really fun. We had people reading it in Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, German. It was crazy. It was interesting. And those are things you can do at church, right? And also have like a little bit of a feast, celebrate, soak up the spirit, however it is that you do that. Maybe dance, maybe sing, just kind of feel that divine energy, right? And feel the fact that the good news is out there, right? The good news being that we're all going to be okay in the end, right? That's kind of what the good news is all about, that we're all redeemed, we're all freed from death, so on and so forth. So on a church perspective, there's that. But from a witch perspective, this is a really special time too, because our power comes from God, comes from the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit pours that down into us, into the thing that is our soul, and our soul becomes that kind of like spark, that kind of, flint and steel that catches and connects us, right, to God, and allows that just might of the Holy Spirit to flow down and channel out into the world through us. So this is a big deal. And this is a great time as Christian witches, after a church service, if you go to church, to spend some time, again, singing, dancing, meditating with the Holy Spirit, inviting the Holy Spirit into your life, inviting her to fill you up with that fire, that passion, that power to make change in the world. That is God's power, right? To fill you up with God's power and show you how to manifest it out into the world in the ways that God is directing you to do, right? So this could look like, again, raising your energy however you want, doing a meditation, right? Thinking about the fact that we're all the human family, meditating on the concept of all these different languages and cultures and customs, doing ritual to fill your spiritual cup, right? To rejuvenate yourself, maybe doing some self-care for the day, maybe doing something that, rests you and relaxes you, something that restores your spirit. Do something that makes you feel connected. That's what this day is all about. It's about that connection. It's about reception, right? So we're not doing this to just like manifest some random stuff like money or nothing. We are doing this not to gain, but to receive. And that is different in that when you're trying to gain something, you're trying to get it. When you're trying to receive something, you are trying to let yourself open up to it. Because this isn't something you have to work for, fight for to gain. This is something that the Holy Spirit's already trying to give you. The Holy Spirit is trying to get to you. The Holy Spirit's trying to give you what you need to go move on. You have to open yourself up to it. You have to be open to receive that gift, right? Otherwise, you might end up on that burning Pikmin train because eventually the Holy Spirit will be like, what the fuck? And just like knock the door open if she really, really needs to. Don't make her do that. It's easier if you just get into the zone, right? But this is about recommitting your own self, right? Just like how we have that concept of doing a recommitment to our spiritual tenets and covenants in Judaism, you have spiritual tenets in Christianity too. And this is one of those times where as you're filling yourself up with that spiritual energy and reconnecting, kind of, getting that new spark, getting that fresh flint and steel, this is a time to recommit to why you are even walking this path to begin with, to why you are even seeking any kind of power to begin with. Not for yourself, not for your own glory, not for your own, prowess or comfort or power or anything else, but for the sake of manifesting God's will into the world. Christian witchcraft is not about one's own gain. It certainly isn't. Christian witchcraft is about centering yourself to be the hands and feet of God. And so this is a great day to do that ritual, to remind yourself of that, to just have a one-on-one with God and the Holy Spirit and Jesus, to fill your cup, to open the gates that might bar you off from the Holy Spirit's gifts, and to just let that fire wash over you, right? And you can represent that however you'd like. If you want to anoint yourself with cinnamon oil like they do for confirmations, which happens also around this time. I got confirmed like a month after Pentecost. You can do something like that. You can make some kind of spicy food, spicy cinnamon tea, anything like that. Ooh, even mull some wine. Mull some wine, that's a great idea, right? Get some nice spices and cinnamon and stuff into a nice cup of red wine. Let yourself celebrate. Let yourself celebrate. This is a midpoint, kind of midsummer, mid-spring, early summer celebration. Let yourself celebrate the warmth, the joy, the flourishing of life, the rebirth of the world, the rebirth of yourself. Bring all that in. Take these ideas and think about having a very nice Pentecost. Pentecost being right on this time this year. So, I hope this is helpful for you to think about. I hope you learned something new, and I'll see you guys next time for another video. See ya.